So we'll have about 50 minutes to 51, just under an hour.
Okay, no problem. So I will just introduce the session, then we can begin.
Okay.
Okay. So good morning again, dear colleagues. My name is Lawrence from the RCD unit at the postgraduate school. Just a disclaimer before we begin the session that it will be recorded. So I have started actually the recording now. So as I said, my name is Lawrence from the RCD department. I would like to thank of all the attendees for taking your time to join this session, and most importantly, our presenter, Dr. Pumuzala, for his efforts in preparing to give this presentation on finding and managing intellectual property for research commercialization in your postgraduate studies. Just before I begin the session, I would like to go over a few housekeeping rules. So obviously, if you have any question during the session, you may raise your hand and I'll indicate to the facilitator and we will address your question. And also please note that a feedback survey will be shared in the chat session, and we kindly ask everybody to fill it in so that we may get insights on how useful this workshop is. And just another thing, just to ask Dr. Lang, is it possible, do you want the question in between the session, or would you like to address all the questions at the end of the session?
In between is fine. That's also fine. I mean, I like to encourage discussion there.
Okay. So again, before I begin, I'd like just to go over Dr. Pumuza Langa's bio. So Dr. Pumuza Langa is currently employed as the Senior Manager, Commercial Analyst, and is also in the interim fulfilling the Acting Director role at the University of Johannesburg Technology Transfer Office. He has a PhD in Operation Management from UJ with the study focusing on dynamic capabilities developed by innovative enterprises from Technology Business Incubation Service. His initial career was in biotechnology, startup company, Biotech, as a laboratory technician in the DNA sequencing laboratory. After completing his studies in the life sciences related qualification, diploma in biotechnology, and BTech degree in pharmaceutical sciences. He then moved on to management studies, starting with a BCom in management and a master's in organizational leadership. He has over a decade of experience within the field of innovation management, where he has played various roles in intellectual property, commercialization, and several publicly financed research and development institutions in South Africa. These include being previously employed as the R&D outcome manager at the Commercial for Scientific and Industrial Research, responsible for IP commercialization matters within the Material Science Manufacturing Unit, followed by commercialization manager at the University of Pretoria, where he was responsible for a wide range of technology transfer aspects such as IP licensing, seed fund management, business plan development. His research interests are within the field of strategic management, technological innovations, with a particular focus on IP commercialization, business incubation, spin-out companies, and technology transfer at large. So without any further ado, I'd like to hand over to Dr. Pumuza to begin the session. You may begin, Doc. Thank you.
Okay, no, thank you. Thank you very much. And glad to be here to do this session. One of my favorite topics, just talking about innovation. So I'll just share my screen, and then please let me know if you see it, and then we can start. Is it can you see it?
Yes, we can see it, but it's not on the full view. Yeah, yes, we can see it now. It's perfect. Yeah. Oh, it's gone now again.
Okay, so let me just do that again. Slide show.
Yeah.
Okay, what's the issue now? Okay. Okay, let me stop sharing and share again. Sorry. What's happening there? Okay, share. Can you see it now?
Yes, yes, we can see it, but yeah, we can see it. Perfect. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Okay. So when I was requested to give this talk, I thought let me start off with as perhaps as myself when I was a researcher and I was also participating in these workshops as a postgrad student myself. And I mean, of course, as you are a postgrad student trying to do a master's PhD, uh, when we start, we're just thinking all along about the research process. Okay, so we're busy with the literature review, we're busy with formulating your questions and trying to design your study and how you're going to collect data and eventually sort of interpret findings and publish. This is the ultimate, sort of research pursuit, that you get to follow this and get to finish your thesis and so on and so forth and graduating. But in the university is a very interesting space because it has another element to it, which talks about intellectual property, innovation, and commercialization. Sometimes is that element. It can be found, by the way, in your thesis or your research study that you're doing. Now, having said that, let me go to the next. Yeah. So people always think, oh, but no, innovation is isolated. It's just for, people who are doing things in the research labs and not necessarily everyone who's involved, like people in the humanities. And it's for a certain type of people, but or a certain type of research fields or faculties and departments, but it's not necessarily. And I'm trying to maybe spend a bit of time debunking that myth. That don't think of it as isolation. Let's first start looking at it in terms of how it exists around us. So one of my favorite definition around intellectual property uh, or innovation, as you may, is that it's all around us. So every product or service that we use in our daily lives is a result of these big or small innovations, okay, that make a product look or function better. I mean, I'll make an example. I've got different types of products here. And we probably use some of these. If we had breakfast, you probably had a certain, brand of cereal, soap, or toothpaste or device. But I can bet if I asked anyone in the room what cereal did you have, everyone won't say the same thing. They'll probably one will mention one brand and one will mention the other. The same will go with your device. Not everyone would have had the same. Now use the same, and the choices that you would have made would have been based on your perception of what that product entails. And the people that created these products are doing that deliberately because they want to differentiate, they want to innovate, and want you to make those choices. So the point I'm driving is that we shouldn't engage with innovation and products as something that's isolated from us. It just happens even with our daily life. So I think that sort of makes us then get into this discussion about intellectual property, innovation, even with our research in a much more relaxed manner. I mean, even one of the most creative, performing artists, Michael Jackson, who supposedly would have been one of the best dancers, embraced innovation. So he figured, how do I use innovation in my craft? So he came up with an innovation where I don't know. I mean, I'm giving away my age, but we used to see this video where he would sort of do anti-gravity illusion. So you think he's falling when he's not, but actually it wasn't him doing that. There was a patent for a shoe that was done to allow that. So it becomes a mechanical engineering discussion. It's no longer a dance discussion. So like, how do you then reach this angle where does this contraption fit and how does it create these sort of angles and anti-gravity illusions. And, so if the world's greatest dancer could have embraced patents, innovation, I think us as researchers who do that in our daily lives to research and find new solutions can do the same. Okay, but that was just, I guess, for us to start the discussion in a more light manner. But okay, to get maybe to some of the serious things around this innovation business, one of the things that people always discuss is say, okay, fine, I'm doing research, and when I do research, naturally I go to, scientific journals to get publications, and this is the academic way of doing and writing things. So, okay, of course, information can be found in different sources as well. Like if you're doing some work on on economic sectors, or you can go to government sources and get statistics on the economy. Or if you want to get some other information, you can get market reports and so on. But I've pointed an arrow on patent databases. So it turns out that some information, by the way, is particularly in the science field, sometimes you won't find information, especially new information in scientific journals. Sometimes what people are doing now is they're publishing in patent journals. So what they're doing, they file a patent, and that information would be there instead of writing an article and immediately and exposing what they've done. And of course, you must write and you must publish. And it's not a matter of either or. Okay, you can do them both. They can work concurrently. So you can file a patent, and you don't need to for it to be granted. And you just get a number, reference number or priority number, as they call it. Then you can publish the next day, for example. But the trend is being that some of this information is found in patent databases. People are finding patents, and you can find information. So it can actually help you with your research if you start looking for some certain molecules or compounds or processes that might relate to your work in patent databases, which is an integral part of uh, uh, innovation management and intellectual property protection. So one of the things, or some of the things uh, that get triggered when we talk about innovation is, okay, what is it? Who does it apply to, and how is it done? So one of my favorite definitions is by Ted and Passant, where they say it's a process of creating value from ideas. So you could be doing your work, but and your research, but if there's some sort of value that you think exists, you probably are innovating. So you're just not necessarily probably doing research for the sake of research as you might think. And that whole thing of, and you could have a potential invention, because Ed Roberts, for example, states innovation is about invention times commercialization. So what you invent and how it can probably get commercialized. Although I think this should also have the word utilization. So, because commercialization seems to suggest that uh, these innovations are just for commerce, and sometimes they couldn't be for social applications. So it's sort of the process of invention and utilization as well, not necessarily just commercialization. And what we see with innovations is that they're not necessarily all the same in nature. So some innovations are incremental. So you're just improving something little by little. So it could be an existing technology and the markets exist. So you're just doing something that will play in that space. But some innovations are disruptive in their nature. So which means, they have a completely new technology. So you find something completely new to or using the technology that's new, but then you're servicing the existing market. Or it can be radical, where it's completely new tech, completely new markets, and so on. But I think as you're working on your research and you think something could fall in any of these spaces, you probably are onto something. And so if you look at this is a pencil. And because the reason I'm making this demonstration is because people always say, what is new really, because most of the time it's difficult to come up with something completely new. But I want to make an example of a pencil. So let's make an assumption that there was just a pencil. There was a pencil, but then there was also an eraser. And people use an eraser to rub out whatever they make a mess on. Oh, and then they figure, oh, every time I have to use an eraser, I have to go fetch it somewhere and use a pencil. But then they think, okay, how about I take an eraser and then I attach it to a pencil? So the pencil is not new, the eraser is not new, but the pencil with an eraser is actually a new product or a new font concept. So I'm trying to emphasize that you could be working on research that relates to a pencil, so to speak, and someone, or maybe you also know that there's an existing research relating to an eraser, but you say the combination of the eraser and the pencil makes a new thing. So that's somehow you are creating things which are new. But of course, now if you look at the examples I've made about that innovation could be in different ways. So it could be that so you're just doing something incremental, you're taking something existing and the markets exist, you're just combining and making, it's not necessarily something disruptive or radical for that matter. Okay, but then now once this, if your research you feel has some sort of protectability and or intellectual property that can uh, have some sort of predictability, you can think of the different types of intellectual property. Actually, I sourced this from a guide. I'll write the name in the link. I see it's not written. It's very important to reference your sources. So this particular guide, I like it because it shows the different types of intellectual property or rights in one snapshot. So for instance, some technologies can, depending on their nature, or research depending on on its nature, can be subjected to what we call a patent. Okay, and patents are for new inventions, and then some type of research can lend itself to what we call registered designs. So which talk to functionality and appearance. I'll make examples as we go. But then what we find, of course, in the other areas of research is that not necessarily some things can lend themselves towards patents or design, but they can be maybe you come up with a new like I know we had colleagues from the Department of Business Management, they came up with some sort of excuse me, board game. So there was nothing necessarily patentable there because their nature of board games is not necessarily okay. The creative graphics and things could lend themselves to copyright, which is an automatic right anyway, by authorship and so on. But then they had a name for it, so we filed then what we call a trademark, because in that sense um, it can be associated with that particular game that they created. But in some instances, of course, you could just, but of course, in academia, we have to share information. But there's trade secrets in business and not so much in academia. And know-how. Of course, some of the things could be just how you know how to do certain things, and this must be recorded, but you just not necessarily putting it out there as such. Okay, so maybe just to deal with some of these different types of intellectual property, so that one can understand, because everyone, most of the time, when they hear this concept of IP, they always associate it with patents. So they say, oh, I'm going to patent my board game when you can't, in my country, because, for instance, a patent protects a new apparatus. So a board game wouldn't be a new apparatus, a new method or process, so this would relate mostly to, like if you have something that there's a piece of equipment that maybe you in the mechanical engineering space, you've created this new thing or improved its process, or even the reactions inside the reactor, a new formulation, that's sort of what patents protect, okay? Um, and interestingly enough, when you protect patents, it's actually quite a lengthy process. So this graphic shows how much time it can take or how long it can take before you can get it granted. So you could start now. Let's say you go on conference tomorrow and you feel you've got something protectable. Of course, I urge that you would have to spend a bit, come give the tech transfer office or IP office in the university more time than that. But okay, let's make the assumption you go on conference next week and you feel you've got something, you can file for a disclosure, and then we can help you file for a patent. Then if you go present, at least you know there's a reference. But you might not get a patent in a week. It could take up 3 months, but during the time, you're free to then do your publications or writings, because you already know that you filed for the protection. But it also, yeah, just make you understand that this can be a lengthy process, by the way. But it should not obviously stop you from doing your publications, because that's already something that you would have a reference number from a priority date, as they call it, from the moment you file. Okay, so that's patents. So designs are quite interesting. We see this a lot from the Faculty of Arts, design and architecture, where they're coming up with things which have aesthetic in nature and functional, and they have like a shape, configuration, ornamental, and they have a pattern which is different than what exists. So they sort of like and have some originality based on that. So like a chair is a chair, right? But like how the industrial design students would design these different chairs would have different shapes, and these new or original shapes are subject to protection through design, because it's what they would intend. Even bottles. I mean, you would think a bottle is a bottle. These are water bottles, but if you look at them, they're just done by their different designs, and one can protect that design because these designs have a way of originality in that sense. Okay, so trademarks would protect words or phrases or symbols. These are some of the most common or classical illustrations of how these things play a role. So if you see that one particular brand, you can associate it with that product. And you can't do that for some of like your research area if you have a catchy name for what you've come up with. Okay, so some of the questions we get is, where do I start if I think that my research work relates to an idea that has a potential for innovation? So you can do an IP analysis, and our office can actually help with that, the tech transfer office. We can help you also do like a market analysis, but also determining the technical feasibility is also important, because if you're working on experiments and you're not getting the right concentrations or you're not getting the consistency in your formulation, then that doesn't help, because it must be replicable and it must be technically feasible. But the point is, these three things probably matter the most: the IP analysis aspect, the market aspect, and the technical aspect. Okay, and then some of the things is that one has to start looking at these new inventions and how they get communicated in a way that the language of commerce would package them, because I think sometimes as researchers we can get bogged down into the technical aspects and not maybe imagine how industry would perceive it or how potential users would relate to this, because now productization would be different to just your contraption or a prototype. And so, and a good example that we always make is that a researcher would say, oh, I've come up with an ink dispensing unit that can produce words when pressed down on a substrate such as paper. And I mean, I probably lost most of you there, but maybe just to see if you're still around, does anyone want to take a guess what am I talking about? What is an ink dispensing unit? that can produce graphics when pressed on a substrate. Any guess, any takers? Are you there? Can you hear me? Am I audible?
Yes.
Yes. Yes, you
Okay,
are
okay.
audible.
And any takers? I can't see my screen because I'm sharing the. So I don't know if someone put something on the chat or if please assist if there is.
There is a hand up by Dami. You can unmute and speak.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Are you referring to something like a printer, here with this example?
Yeah, it could be. It could be, and there's no wrong or right answer. Any other guesses or can move? So it could be a pen as well. What does a pen do? It dispenses ink, it produces words when pressed upon a paper. And of course, the printer is actually, of course, a good example. But then also a stamp, right? So a stamp would press against a substrate such as paper and produce words or graphics. And yes, a printer would do the same. So you're not far from the actual example that we made. So, but the point is, the fact that you and I are having different examples, of which are all correct, by the way, is the whole thing, right? That there's a thinking about how you technically write your work, because it is. I mean, if you had to explain this thing in a research approach, is that it is an ink dispensing unit. It is, the technology is about producing graphics or words to when pressed on a substrate. And this is the thing, because, by the way, the technology and a product can be two different things. So ink dispensing is technology, but a pen is a product, a stamp is a product, a printer is a product, but they're all products of ink dispensing. And sometimes also one of the things that we do is try to assist researchers in shifting their thinking around how do they productize what they have. So you could have, another example is I worked with researchers in the Science Council that were working on materials that would encapsulate active ingredients, but like they particularly researched this on probiotics. So for them, it was, if these probiotics can be encapsulated, it would mean that the active ingredient there, which is the good bacteria, can always stay protected, and then if it goes into the stomach, that's when you need it the most, so that's when it will work. But the technology was about encapsulation, materials used for encapsulation for active ingredients. And if you had to think beyond just the probiotics, you could start thinking of like food that has funny taste, like the food that is good for you sometimes doesn't taste good. If you encapsulate it, the kids can eat it and then still not feel like they are tasting something bad, but when it goes to your stomach, then it gets released for its nutrients where they're needed the most. The same technology could have been used for fertilizers. Fertilizers, you need them in the garden or in the field. But if you encapsulate the active ingredient using the same technology for probiotics, it would serve the same purpose. But now encapsulated fertilizer is different to an encapsulated fish oil or food that has a healthy offering. So sometimes it's just that shift around the technology versus the product and how your research can apply to that. But also what's equally important is trying to gauge, so there's this parameter called technology readiness levels. So you have to gauge about where your research is or your ideas? It's sort of at a concept development, which would be called TRL2, or is there some sort of experimental proof of concept, or are you at like a lab demonstration or prototype, or actually just like having like a fully functional system that can be deployed? And of course, what's quite interesting is that it can differ according to different sectors, because sometimes you could be just working on software, and you have to understand what TRL level is, or what language is used to explain the TRL level for software. The same would apply for medical device, for medical science related projects. So, the language around preclinical research, phase 1 trials up to 5. So it's very important, because what would happen is you might need some funding for your research. I mean, away from just your normal research funding you'd get university, you might want to get funding to get from funders who fund technology development. So we do assist some researchers in preparing applications for funding, such as the Technology Innovation Agency, TIA. And this is the parameter they use to say, okay, how far are you? Where are you? Do you just have proof of concept or a prototype level? And where will you be when you get the funding after you've injected it? So that's why I've like put those question marks, because it's always a question of where you are and where you want to be. Okay, and some of these fundings that can be raised would depend on the level where you are. So like if it's sort of TRL3, which is sort of applied research up to sort of technology development, that bubble is not so big, because they fund up to 500,000, for example. But, if you like a tech dev going to pre-commercialization, it gets a bit higher and higher, and so on and so forth. And so, okay, maybe just to come towards some of the towards the end of my discussion, then I can open up as well for a bit more for questions. Is that if you look at the UJ, and I don't know where you might be. Okay, so I took a snapshot, but then there was one faculty missing, which is the business school, which I didn't fit in here, but you put it in the business school, so don't feel like you left out in the discussion. But so there's the 9 faculties, or the 8 with the one with business school, making it 9. There's the perception that this innovation only happens at FADA, which would be mostly designs. And we see that even with the disclosures coming to our office. Or there's a perception, and actually engineering, Phoebe has the highest disclosures, the engineering. Research generally lends itself a lot to patents, so we see that. And then there's the Faculty of Science and Health Sciences, which have some sort of, formulations and experiments and so on and so forth, which lend themselves in potential filing of patents. And of course, when you look at College of Business and Economics, or Faculty of Humanities, Faculty of Law, you don't see, or education for that matter, you don't see much. And it's not to say there's no innovations there. I mean, there's a lot. I mean, there's a research from the Faculty of Humanities that was working on a psychometric test that which had a set of questions which would yield a certain optimal results, and that was from psychology, okay, which is in the Faculty of Humanities, and that was an innovative set of questions that now a company is trying to negotiate a license with UJ to use this test in their business, okay? And so on and so forth. And by the way, there's also scope for cross-disciplinary research, where, especially where there's sort of, I know now the guys at law were busy trying to work on an app that can be a virtual boardroom, a simulated courtroom, sorry, not boardroom. So the scope, but the understanding that it doesn't matter. The point I'm making is it doesn't matter which faculty you're in. There is scope for innovation and research that can lead to that. I will share this guide with the colleagues at postgraduate studies, and they can send to you. So especially if you're not necessarily in the other faculties like engineering, but it says it's a guide for humanities, arts and social science innovation researchers in South Africa. Very important because it touches on how colleagues in the arts and humanities, social science can also participate in the innovation space, which has been for many years, perceived as not necessarily for them. And of course, even in fashion. So, this is one of my favorite examples. So, if anyone has seen this brand called Mathosa by Laduma, which is like the patterns of Xhosa, related attire, which is now made like fashion. He was actually an NMU student, Nelson Mandela University, but was NMMU at the time. And he was a fashion design student and started exploring with this. And now it's one of the most powerful, brands when it comes to fashion. And it was a university project. It was a student who just had an idea and then took it out there. And I guess as postgrad researchers, your research can also be at that potential. And if you'd like us to assist you, we can have that discussion. And as you do your research, master's, PhD, do keep that in mind. And eventually, it's about then trying to bridge the gap between where your research is and where you want it to go. And that's what we can assist you with. And I'm more than happy to have the discussion and take some questions in that regard.
Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Langa, for the presentation. Really, really appreciate it. It was very insightful. Just indicate if there is any questions from anybody. So if you have any question, you can rather type it in the chat box, or you can raise your hand and I will indicate to Dr. Langa so that he can address the question before he leaves the session. Yeah. So if you wanna ask any question, you can unmute and speak, as I have enabled everyone's mic. So if you have any question or any comments that you'd like to make, then you can just unmute your mic and speak. Or you can also chat in the chat box. You can type your answer there. The question, yeah, rather. In that sense, I would like to rather believe that Dr. Langa's session was very clear and nobody has any questions for him.
Okay, there
Yes.
we go from.
Yes.
Sorry, that was a mistake. I understood what you were saying. That was a mistake. I meant to hit the react. Sorry.
Okay. No problem.
No problem, but I have a question for you, so it's fine. What's your research on, and what are you doing your master's or PhD or?
You mean me specifically?
Yeah. Just now that you spoke, now I have a question instead.
Yeah, that's fine. I'm in the Faculty of Humanities in the Department of Communication and Media, and my research is on the history of African animation.
Nice. Well, that's incredible. So you're trying to see what they were doing as animations, drawings, and that sort of thing.
Yes, specifically from Africa
Wow.
and in 3 countries.
So you could look at potentially collaborating with the with the guys that can actually generate these characters and bring them to life. How about that?
Yeah, I'm doing something along the lines of that. Like I'm observing the differences between animation in 3 African countries.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm just thinking out loud in my mind, like somebody, I mean, if some animation, I mean, this is of course your research is on the history and so on, but I mean, in terms of productization, you could have some interesting animations that could be created and brought to life, and collaborate with the guys in who can do script writing as well, and maybe we get the next big thing after Mickey Mouse, but an African character, animation character. Who knows?
Yeah,
Yeah. Okay.
thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Demi, for that. Thank you so much, Dr. Langa. Is there any other question or any other comments from anybody? So in that sense, obviously, I believe that Dr. Langa's presentation was quite very insightful and very much straight to the point. And I believe that everybody did understood what the point that you was trying to make in terms of, the session which was being discussed today. And so in that case, without any, waste of time, I'd like to ask if it's possible if we can end the session. Since you said you also have to run, you have a meeting at 11. So if there's no any further questions from anybody or any comments, if that's fine with you to end the session.
Yeah, that's okay. And thank you very much for everyone's attention.
Okay, thank you so much again, Dr. Langa. And just a reminder from me, from my side, that I did send the feedback survey in the chat box. So we just kindly ask you to please request you to fill it in for us, so that we can get insights on how this workshop was useful as well and how we can improve in the future. So obviously, without any further ado, I'd like to thank again Dr. Langa for taking this opportunity to present this workshop on finding and managing intellectual property for research commercialization in your postgraduate studies. And here, the postgraduate school research capacity development, we appreciate your insights, your efforts, to come here and to present this workshop and to educate all the participants that were here today to share your knowledge and your expertise. And again, thank you so much to all the participants for taking your time. And we really, really, really do appreciate you all. And thank you again. And in that sense, I will end the session and enjoy your day further. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.